Hacktoberfest kicks off. JS13K Winners, Postgres gets the WASM treatment, and a pick of the week that puts the RGB in Beeb. All that and more on this episode of The Download. Welcome back to another episode of The Download. I'm your host, Christina Warren, Senior Developer Advocate at GitHub, and this is the show where we cover the latest developer news and open source projects. Please like and subscribe. So my shirt/hoodie this week is from some McDonald's collab, not to be confused with the McDonald's by Travis Scott collab from a couple of years ago. I also have merch from that, or the McDonald's by Cactus Plant Flea Market collab that I'm very seriously considering ordering several pieces from. Please let me know in the comments if I should spend $150 on this sweatshirt or any of the others, because half the reason I buy these things is to show them off to all of you. Okay, enough nonsense. Let's get into the latest news. Okay, so first up, just a reminder that we are now just 5 weeks away from GitHub Universe. GitHub Universe is taking place on November 9th and 10th in San Francisco, California, as well as online, and you can get all the details at githubuniverse.com. I've also got a link down below to a great blog post highlighting the different stuff that you can expect to see at GitHub Universe and how our hybrid experience will work. I'm actually one of the hosts this year, which is super exciting. So if you're in town and you see me, please be sure to say hello. Next, it is now October, which means that not only is it spooky season, it's also time for Hacktoberfest, which is back for its 9th year. If you're not familiar, Hacktoberfest is an annual celebration from our friends at DigitalOcean, and it encourages open source contributions during the month of October. And as Abby says in a blog post that I've got linked below, we all use and depend on open source software. In the last year alone, there were over 2.6 billion with a B contributions on GitHub, and Hacktoberfest is a really great way to give back to the open source projects that we all, depend on every day. Now, usually when people think about giving back to open source, they think about doing so with code contributions. But there are actually many non-code contributions that are necessary to projects, such as writing, design, advocacy, and financial contributions. So if you want to give back or participate, consider writing some docs, designing a logo, even sending out a tweet or making a TikTok about your favorite project. All this stuff really does make a difference. And I've got some links down below to the main Hacktoberfest page, a blog about how GitHub is participating, and a guide from my girl Mish about how you can find projects that are participating in Hacktoberfest and submit your contributions. Speaking of celebrating open source, the winners of JS13K 2022 were announced this week. And this was the 11th annual JS13K Games, which is a coding competition that challenges participants to make a game using 13 kilobytes or less of JavaScript, which the results were amazing, right? So there were 167 games submitted in all kinds of genres, and as I said, the results were just so impressive. My friend Lee Riley has a really great write-up on the winners on the GitHub blog, which I've got linked down below. But check out this little video that I made of me playing Dante, which is a 3D puzzle game done in just 13 kilobytes of JavaScript. It even has music. So good. Congrats to all the winners, and thank you for what you do. In some software update news, the newest version of GitHub Desktop, version 3.1, has improved submodule support and now supports multi-commit diffing. And both of these features are going to make you more productive if you're using GitHub Desktop. And I've got a link to the changelog post with more details down below. If you haven't tried out GitHub Desktop, it is a really great way to interface with Git without having to use the command line. It's available for Mac, Windows, and there are some very well-maintained community builds for Linux. I know people in the comments have asked about that before. They're actually maintained by people at GitHub. Really good stuff. In addition to the updates to GitHub Desktop, Visual Studio Code got an update as well. Now, this update literally came in as I was finalizing my script, so I don't have a ton of detail, but version 1.72, or the September 2022 release, has some nice improvements. First, you can now hide actions from the toolbar to make things look a little bit tidier. And maybe the most exciting new feature for me, someone who frequently deals with directories with lots of media files, you can now actually preview certain audio and video file formats inside VS Code, which is really cool. I've got links to the complete changelog and blog post down below, as well as the VS Code repo, if you want to share your feedback or your contributions. Moving on, I'd like to congratulate everyone on the TypeScript team and in the TypeScript community for 10 years of TypeScript. The project officially turned 10 on October 1st. And as Daniel mentions in his blog post, which I've got linked below, when TypeScript debuted, there was a lot of skepticism around the idea of bringing static types to JavaScript. And I'm pretty sure that if I searched my tweets or my Stark-Gear messages with friends, that I was one of the people who was skeptical. But 10 years later, TypeScript hasn't just survived, it's thrived. And it's one of the most used and most loved languages on the planet. And a lot of the things that started in TypeScript have now found their way into the ECMAScript standard. So congratulations to TypeScript and props to the community who's made it so much more than what many of us wrote off as being, kind of a ridiculous joke a decade ago. Here's to 10 more years. Moving on, I want to give a shout out to the teams at Supabase and Snaplet for creating an open source implementation of Postgres in the browser using WebAssembly. So Supabase and Snaplet were not the first teams to bring Postgres to the browser. Both teams acknowledged that Crunchy Data first shared their vision for how this could work. But Supabase and Snaplet wanted to do something open source, and they have. So I've got links to Supabase and Snaplet's blog posts down below, but I really loved how in-depth Supabase went into how all of this works and what's going on behind the hood with WebAssembly and the Postgres server. And Postgres WASM is basically it's a Postgres server that runs in the browser, but it has a full suite of features. So you can have persistent state in the browser. You can restore from a PG dump. There's logical replication of databases, remote databases rather. The demo, which is linked down below, it's also available at wasm.supabase.com. It's fairly resource intensive. It is a 30 megabyte download. I just want to prepare you. And that means that this is not going to be optimized in a way that would make sense for most people to use. That being said, there are some scenarios where something like this could make sense, like if you were doing documentation for a tutorial or a demo, or if you need a way to do some sort of offline data processing, or for testing certain features, or maybe even in some support scenarios. But the bottom line for me is that even if Postgres and WASM don't make sense in a general sense right now, that doesn't make me any less excited about the potential that this has. And as an avowed WASM fangirl, I love seeing stuff like this. So I've got links to the Snaplet and Supabase blog posts and the GitHub repo for this project down below. And now it's time for my pick of the week. Okay, so I saw this on Hacker News this morning, and I knew instantly that this was going to be my pick of the week. It's so good. GitHub user Deku Nukem has documented how he completely pimped out his BBC microcomputer. Inside a PC case, he added RGB lights, USB inputs, full-height floppy drives, and more. It's incredible. Deku Nukem, this is amazing work. Now, if you're not familiar with the BBC Micro because you're not from the UK or you weren't around during the height of the 1980s home computer boom, or like me, both, let me give you a little bit of a primer. So in the early 1980s, the BBC, yes, the same BBC that plays the Great British Bake Off and the Ricky Gervais version of The Office, started a computer literacy project to introduce people to what computers could do. And there was a small company called Acorn Computer, and their design won out, and it became known, they created a computer that became known as the BBC microcomputer, or the Beeb. And from what I understand, for many kids in the UK, this was the first computer that they used in school. It's kind of like the Apple II in the UK. Fun fact, Acorn went on to create the Acorn RISC machine, or ARM. Yes, the very same ARM instruction set that powers basically every device known to man, from the chip in your smartphone to the M1 Pro Max in my laptop. So the Beeb has had quite a legacy. But beyond all that history, I really love the way that Deku Nukem so lovingly preserved and also got his Beeb working with some more modern components and made it so freaking pretty. It's really something to behold. So I've got a link to his video and his GitHub repo that has a walkthrough of the entire process in the links down below. I love this. That does it for me. Let me know what your first computer was in the comments down below and your thoughts on any of our other stories. Remember, I do need to know if I should buy that hoodie or not. If you like this episode, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to us at the GitHub YouTube channel for all your nerd needs. See you next time.